About 30 minutes ago, I received an email from the Flemish government that our proposal for an upcoming game that we were asking funding for had been denied. In that single email, about 2 weeks of work and 4 months of opportunity cost have suddenly just gone to waste. I'd spent a lot of time back when I was still in Japan drafting ideas for this new awesome game that we're gonna make for you guys, and we applied to get prototype funding, which would be about 25,000 euros. Nothing too crazy, but it would have meant that for about 4 to 6 months we would have our runway secured of making these games for you guys. We got denied. Okay, that sucks, but when I received that email and I read it, I suddenly realized that making games isn't the game. This was a video idea I've been thinking about for a longer time already, but I figured that now is probably the best time to talk about it. Maybe I'm still a bit triggered from, just reading the email and like the jury verdict, but I do think that there are some people who get into game development who aren't really prepared for the harsh truth, but I honestly find it a bit of a clickbait title of game development. As a quick forward, if you're doing this just as a hobby and you're not planning on going full-time for game development, this video is not for you. I mean, you can still watch it, of course, give us a little bit of AdSense since we now don't have that funding anymore, but I'm not really speaking to you that much. And some things I say may still interest you, but you're not my main audience here. I'm currently talking to people who have just gone full-time or are considering going full-time, or maybe even will just relate with what I'm saying in this video and can just go into the comments and agree with me. Because a lot of people think that, making games is all fun and games and we are such a vibrant and jolly community filled with diverse people and we just all seem to be having a lot of fun. But sometimes you need to remember that that's not always the case. Sometimes you do get hit in the face, like for example with the email I just got, or with a launch that doesn't really perform as good as you would have expected or you would have thought, and that's just life. That's something that you need to start dealing with. And I want you to prepare for this because it took us some time, but I think I was already pretty solid at dealing with these hardships, but I want to talk to you guys as well and get you more prepared for it. Now, I think the biggest thing that starting developers, once they go full-time, miss is being a pro. And I don't mean being a pro in terms of actually, having a well-established portfolio already and released multiple games and you're already swimming in money. No, just acting like a professional, like this is your job and not just a hobby project. I've been talking to so many developers. I've been in coaching programs where I was either coaching or I was also being coached. So I've interacted with a lot of people by now, and there are some things that are easy, actionable things that you can do that would have made it so much better, that would have given a much better impression of who you are for me if you just did these few little simple things. And honestly, the first thing that I don't even know why I need to say this feels so dumb to me, is have a calendar. Have dates, have plans, and plan in advance. There are so many developers that I talk to that don't really know when anything is going on. Or for example, I'm in a coaching program with I think 5 or 6 other studios. And in there, there are certain events that we have, either meetups or coaching calls or whatever. And I had noted down all of these dates 3-4 months in advance. And then suddenly on one of the updates, they gave me the new dates, but they didn't mention it. And we were the only developers that even noticed that the dates were different, because I went and I asked the management team, hey, did you guys change these dates? And they were like, oh yeah, we did, but it turns out you guys are the only ones who actually note down these things. And I was shocked. I come from a more corporate background, but nothing too crazy. And it's just normal to use a calendar there. It helps you so much in planning and in knowing when are you gonna have deadlines, when are your milestones, when are you meeting certain people. Maybe you're pitching in 2 months from now and you need to be able to prepare for that. This is something that's so easy to do and it's so required if you want to take yourself serious and if you want other people to take yourself serious. Google Calendar is free, just write down things. You've got the calendar. This was just something I really needed to say because I've been so frustrated by people not accepting deadlines or just not reaching out on days that they reach out, that I just needed to say this. Okay, so now on to the main topic of this video. So the harsh truth of game development, or making games isn't a game. It's really hard being a game developer. If you are still considering it, think about it this way. Are you ready to go 1 to 2 years without really earning that much money, or probably also without anybody really knowing you, anybody caring about you, and just being that Woody meme where it's I'm unique and special, and then you're listed between 5 million different roguelites on Steam and you get 2 purchases? Probably you don't really want that. Probably you have this glamorous idea of you're going to go into it solo or with your friends, and then you're gonna work on a game for half a year or a year, and you're gonna release it on Steam, and suddenly you're going to become the next new overnight Fortnite Dave the Diver or BattleBit or any of those games and you're gonna be swimming in money. The problem is that's simply not the case. There's a very big amount of survivorship bias as well. And that's why I try to make these videos that really reflect negative towards me. I'd like to think that I'm not a bad developer, it's just really hard to make games. Our Game Forge industry has barely grossed at around $5,000 at this point, and honestly, it's really hard to say, but we're above average already. You wouldn't say so, and I mean, I wouldn't say so. I used to make that in less than a month with my old job, and yet here I am making games and keeping doing it. And even if you were like an overnight success and you got so much money, you still won't always be doing what you like. We always get into games because, oh, I like programming, or maybe a lot of you guys have like day jobs in IT, maybe regular software engineering or like DevOps. And it's like, hey, I'm gonna make some games and like code some prototypes because this is fun. But there will be periods in development where you're not having fun. I think the best example of this is for our Game Forge industry. One of our developers, Thomas, who is also like our CEO, he doesn't like the game. Better yet, I feel like at this point he hates the game. And every time there's something wrong that he programmed originally, he tries to be like, oh, I'm never touching Forge industry again. And then I have to basically be there to give him his wake-up call and hold him accountable and be like, what are you doing? This is your job. I don't care if you like it or not. You do it. I know he watches these videos as well, so this is my message to you. You still have a responsibility. You still need to make sure that you have fans that you actually please, even though the game is maybe out already. If something needs to be fixed, you fix it. You just work on it. Maybe you hate 3D modeling. I for the longest time did, and I still kind of do because I'm so bad at it. Doesn't mean that I don't do it, because a game without models, like Forge Industry, would have never even become a thing. Yeah, sure, the models aren't that great and they're not that pretty, but they're still there. They're still a finished product. This is the same case as if I would go to any other job. In my previous job, I worked in sales and I was selling data center equipment. I didn't always like it. I didn't always want to talk to people, but I still did it for the most part. Sure, at one point I was like, okay, I'm done with this, I'm gonna quit my job. But there's simply expectations of you in any profession, and games, even though they seem really fun on the outside, have that same thing. You need to be aware of that. And games, I think, are even worse because this is a really hard industry, not just to get into, but also just in terms of how much you're being paid and things like that. I could be making 3 to 4 times as much as what I'm making right now if I just went back to my old job where it was more boring, more corporate, but I'd have better benefits and it would be okay. But I don't. Even though I have these hardships, I still do like what I'm doing. And I believe that give me 2-3 years, this YouTube channel will grow. I will influence so many other developers. I'll probably be able to make some good games by then, but it's not now. And that's something that I need to remind myself of every day, that game dev is hard, but it takes time. You can't just quit halfway. You can't quit the moment you get that first roadblock. When you get funding denied, or when a publisher suddenly ends up ghosting you, or when your game that you launched before suddenly flops. You can't quit yet. That's not the mindset you can have if you go into this professionally. You need to keep going and you need to keep giving your all whilst you're doing it, no matter how good or bad it's going. Because in the end, you're not making these games for yourself. You're making these games for the hundreds of other people who play the game and who are like, hey, I like this. We're going through hardships, but I know that these are temporary. I know that this is not going to be my life until the end of time. And I also know that I am impacting, with the work that I'm doing, impacting so many more people than I was doing in my old job. Like I said, I could be earning more, but my impact on the world and on people would be much smaller. This YouTube channel, for example, drives me to keep creating because I know that there are guys among you, or girls, who look up to me and who are like, I want to be like him at some point, because I know that even if I look at myself 6 months ago, I've already progressed so much. And 6 months ago me also wants to be current day me because I kept on going. So even though right now maybe things aren't going good, or in a few months you'll realize that things aren't going so good, making a good game, making a game that people like to play, that is something that can leave a lasting impression for years. If there's like a game that some people like and that they play like hundreds of hours of, maybe there's not that many people, but there's probably going to be more than one person who plays your game and who thinks that, hey, this is actually really solid. I personally don't mind suffering a little bit, having to deal with, these hardships. Maybe development isn't going as fast as I can, or like now I have to scrap a project that, we were quite hyped for, because I know that in the end result that I can deliver if it influences like 1,000 people or 10,000 people, or maybe even more depending on like how good the launch is, that's worth it in my opinion. Now quickly, before like you guys start flaming in the comments, I'm not advocating crunch culture. There's a big difference in being an indie game developer and just putting in the work and making sure that you give your all versus working for a big company like EA where, you know, you're not really getting paid anything extra, you're just regularly salaried and you're just doing it to line the pockets of CEOs. But I do think that you need to have discipline, and I do think that if you want to take your indie career professionally, you need to give your all. You need to do as much as you can, keep it still reasonable, but I would personally prefer to have maybe a month or two of like, you know, having a bit of stress, not fully knowing where my game is going, but then launching a product that 10,000 people play and 10,000 people enjoy, versus me just chilling for like half a year and, you know, 100 people maybe only buy the game. I would prefer to have that wider reach, not just for the monetary value, just for, you know, reaching you guys as well with this YouTube channel, getting to read your feedback and knowing that I've done something. Okay, this was a bit of a different video, but I figured, you know, I had some ideas floating in my head and I was like, I'm just gonna spit it out now. If this is the first video you see of us, we're a game development studio and we are very open and transparent, as you might be able to see, about how we develop games. And I also talk about the things that I learned during the process and just wanna help you guys as well. If that's something that interests you, be sure to head down below and give us a like and maybe a subscribe as well. If you're a game dev yourself and you just want advice, you can either join our Discord server as well, which is filled with other game developers where you can ask for advice, or you can send me an email as well and I will personally answer to whatever question you may have. That's all I really had to say. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!